Greetings and welcome to this hangout. I'm Michelle Stinson-Ross, and I am joined today by my good friend, our Michael McWhirter. Mike, do you want to take a moment to tell folks a little bit about what you do and why in the world I picked you to talk to?
Well, I'm a Gemini, and I like long walk. No, I I make my living as a filmmaker, writing, directing, and editing various forms within the medium, music videos, commercials, feature films for sure, and doing a lot of content that spans over a lot of different applications. So everything from stuff that will go to broadcast, like a feature film or TV series, to stuff that is specifically designed for web, such as YouTube, Facebook, etc. I think that sums it up.
How much would you say of what you do is entertainment and how much of it is more marketing type content?
I would say it is, well, I mean, even a music video kind of falls between both. It is entertainment that is marketing, and I could make the same argument for feature films. So when you look at it that way, the marketing aspect, considering commercials are almost strictly marketing, I'd say it's probably a good 70-30 maybe on the marketing side, since even the creative entertainment stuff still has a marketing goal that it is trying to achieve. So, you know, I might work on a feature film that itself is kind of entertainment, but it's entertainment that is for monetization. It's supposed to make money for people to see it. And then obviously then we create a trailer for that feature film. The trailer is almost strictly marketing. I mean, you're not really being entertained by a trailer. And the same can be said of a music video. It kind of needs to stand on its own and entertain you, but obviously the goal is to get you to go to iTunes and click buy that single and listen to that track when you're working out or making dinner or, you know, what have you.
Very cool. I just needed to make that distinction because for the most part, my audience is marketers, business owners, that sort of stuff. And to bring somebody in that is a filmmaker, they're like, what? But there are a lot of skills and disciplines that obviously you use every day that are pertinent to what we do when creating video content for marketing messages. So that's why I wanted to talk to you.
Certainly.
All right, let's jump into this. Specifically, I wanted to talk to you about how we can best take advantage of live video. So we're sitting here in a hangout that is currently live and available to anybody that should happen to watch it. Now, me being who I am, I didn't promote this live event too much. So it really is going to be whoever happens to stumble upon it and watch us while we're talking. But there is also the advantage that while we are live right now discussing things in the moment and somebody could be watching us, we're also recording this for later use. And that's the aspect of live video content that I really want to talk to you about, because not only can we do it here on YouTube with live Google Hangouts, we can also do live video on Facebook. We can do it natively in Twitter. We can kind of sort of do it in Instagram, although Instagram likes to keep it ephemeral and they don't want you to save it and rebroadcast it later. They say they want to provide a safe place for people to share a moment. And so kind of an interesting concept with the way Instagram is doing it. But there's still plenty of opportunities to take that video that we capture either with our webcam or with our smartphone and repurpose it, reuse it. And so that's kind of generally what I want to discuss with you today is being a filmmaker, knowing about the editing process, lighting, audio, all of the things that go into making a fully produced piece that somebody would pay good money to go see. What can we take from your background and apply it to when we're filming those live moments?
Okay, well, I'll jump into one aspect of that. I mean, live video streaming is obviously becoming much bigger. Over the last even, I'd say 6 months, it's grown by leaps and bounds. You know, when you see YouTube jumping on board that and Facebook jumping on board that, that's a clear sign that this is something that the community as a whole are asking for. That being said, I'll use, for example, YouTube. There is a channel called Rocket Jump that is run by a gentleman named Freddie W., who is a very big YouTube star. He's had several web series. He is a filmmaker first that kind of blossomed on YouTube. I think at this point he has 12 million plus subscribers, if I'm not mistaken. And on a pretty regular basis, because an aspect of what he does is a film school, kind of an online film school thing, he will do live streams of Q&As with a director of photography or a producer, someone within the industry. And from what I looked up, his live streams are ended up, when they're actually airing live, he's only picking up something like 10 or 12% of his subscriber base actually tuning into it live. Because if he does it on a Wednesday afternoon at 4, maybe a ton of his subscriber base is in school, in classes, or at work, or just, living their lives. And in that moment, they can't watch. Of course, then he's taking that video and he's placing it on his channel that anyone can watch at their leisure. I can tell you, I get the notifications that he's streaming live. I have yet to be in a situation where I had nothing going on and I could stop in that moment and watch him. But I have watched every single one of the videos after the fact on his channel. So to not record and repurpose a live video is really, it's taking your time and your effort and throwing it away, in my opinion, just because you have such a greater audience that could find you on something that lives for a much longer period. I mean, it lives online indefinitely, as a completed video that you upload to, say, a YouTube or a Facebook. And by doing so, you should build an audience of people that like and need what you are informing them about, who then are more likely to tune into your actual live streams as they happen. So both have value. So discrediting one or the other, I think, is detrimental to any business or any marketer.
Certainly. Let's start with the difference between live and fully produced, because obviously a lot of clients that I run into, they want to get into using video content as part of their marketing communication mix, but then they see the bill for what it takes to really produce. I mean, fully thought out, scripted, well recorded, as well as well edited. That can get really, really pricey, even for something that's maybe 3 to 5 minutes long. If you really want full professional grade production value out of it, even with using motion graphics and animations and stuff along with your captured video, this can get pricey. Absolutely. Is, in your opinion, live production like what we're doing right now, is it a good fit? Are there certain types of content that absolutely, this is a great medium right here, right now? We don't have to go to fully produced stuff in order to have good video content for our brand, our business?
Well, I mean, I would say, obviously both have value. The advantage of doing something live is, I don't think there's anyone in any business capacity, certainly, that doesn't have a smartphone. And if you have a smartphone or a laptop or a web camera, you can be creating live content immediately. Right now you're hearing me on the microphone that's built into my laptop. It sounds fine. I have recorded voiceover pieces that are on some videos that I record, instructional videos that I put online. That the quality is fantastic, as long as I don't have, obviously strange noises in the background. That works just fine. So considering these are items that you kind of have to have in your life anyway, jumping into creating video content can be very, very simple that way. Obviously, produced content kind of can reach and do other things that the live doesn't. For example, if you have a product that your company sells, you can talk about it in a live video and get one response from people. And then you can do a produced piece that really showcases the product. And what I would say the advantage of that is, anytime, people are used to seeing packaged, produced things. When people see a commercial on TV or online for, say, Nike, that looks super slick and cool and interesting and it sounds good, and then they see a commercial for, it's the same with movies. If Transformers cost $300 million and this little indie film costs $2 million, audiences expect to be entertained either way. I don't care how much you spent. I want to be entertained. The same goes for a marketing tool. If you're trying to sell them something, they look at the way that a huge corporation would market to them and the way that your business, they don't know how much your business is worth. They don't know how much you had to spend or not. They just want something. The more professional and the more branded it can look, the more likely they are to see that in a professional capacity and make a purchase. But certainly I would say both have their place. And, whereas a commercial piece or a piece that really focuses on something in depth, like a produced piece, that's something that you only do, once. Like if you are doing an overall example of your product, you would do that once, maybe a year or every couple years. Whereas you could have live videos, especially if it's an item that people interact with, a hair care product or a food product, where you could have those kind of live things that make people, kind of shows people a more intimate version of your product in action. People know that this is produced. So if you have a person in a produced piece saying, I love this product, it's the greatest I've ever used, chances are people are going to assume that as an actor. Whereas if you do a live piece and there's a person standing there and it has that live feel and they're like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever eaten, or my hair, there's a legitimacy that comes from that live thing that makes people go, oh, this is a real person, this is a real thing. And this is, I want to taste that, or I want to try that product. So you kind of cover the gamut of your potential clientele or the audience that you're trying to market to. Just they have different purposes to accomplish those things.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that testing a concept that you want to fully produce, is that a good use of live video? Is like, if I'm going to invest that kind of money in creating something, is it a good idea possibly to put it in front of a loyal community and see how they're going to respond to it and kind of work the bugs out before moving on to fully produced content?
Absolutely. I would say that's a pretty intelligent way of going about it, actually. You have one, ideally, you have one shot at creating that produced piece, that initial one that introduces whatever it is. So if you can build your audience on social networks, which obviously is something that, I don't care what your product is a wise thing to do. Because we live, when's the last time you've been anywhere and not seen people just living on their phone? That's where we exist now. So to have that, to reach out and have people in touch with you in that space, you can use live video as a kind of a testing field to go out there and reach out and say, what do you guys want to know about this? What are your interests in this? Do you want to see how it works? Do you want to see how it tastes? Do you want to see what colors do you want to see? There's a million, obviously it depends on the product or the thing that you are marketing, but there are a million questions that you could easily answer by doing a live video and testing some things out and seeing, okay, when we did a live video on this, we had a much bigger reaction than these things. So let's focus on that aspect of our product or of our thing that we are pushing, so that we know that so far is reaching the desired audience the best.
Excellent. I love how this is going. I will admit I'm a little off today, but that's okay. We'll get past that. So Facebook and Twitter in particular offer us some really great opportunities to go live from our smartphone. And certainly with what's been coming onto the market from both Apple and Samsung and LG and several of the other producers, the cameras and microphones in these devices are really top notch. It's part of the reason why I personally have a Samsung Galaxy, by far one of the best cameras, both forward and rear facing, on the market. And I kind of keep upgrading my phone more for the camera than anything else, I find. So if I know I'm going to be doing live video, and I know I probably want to repurpose and reuse that content, what do I need to know about shooting with my smartphone in order to get the best possible product to repurpose and reuse?
Okay, I mean, there's a couple things. Initially, shooting in portrait mode was kind of a no-no. Obviously, by portrait mode, I mean this way rather than landscape this way. That has become less of an issue. Certainly, I know Facebook, if you upload a video that's in portrait, it displays it that way. YouTube does the same thing. But what I would consider is the fact that if someone is watching your content on a television or on a laptop, or any computer for that matter, if you shot it this way and they go full screen, they're only getting the middle of their screen, that little strip there. Now, with that in mind, it does allow for opportunities to do things after the fact with your video. Certainly, you could take that and position it knowing that you have this wider space to work with and build a custom background for it, build graphics for it, build lower thirds and so forth to help, excuse me, to help, promote your brand. Otherwise, you can shoot in landscape mode. And in landscape mode, you can still do those things. You can still put a lower third. You can still take a logo of your company and put it as what we would refer to as a bug in one of the corners of the screen. You can still make a custom little logo intro or outro that transitions into your video. I would say anytime that you can brand your product or company or even yourself, it's a good idea. So realistically, you can shoot either way, just keep those elements in mind. Know that if you're going to other platforms, which you almost certainly are, shooting in landscape, for example, would be really good. And then if you're using things like they have stabilizers, for example, for cameras, which I'm sure we'll get into. Most of the stabilizers that I've looked at, I have yet to see one that allows your camera to be like this, to be stabilized.
Oh, that's interesting. Well,
all of the ones I've seen have been in landscape. So, I mean, it's not to say you have to do it that way, but it's something to keep in mind when you're deciding what your look of your videos, across time, across your platform are going to be. And I would say another thing to definitely pay attention to is your surroundings. If you're in a very noisy environment, that is going to affect your audio. If you're in an environment that has music playing, that can cause you problems. YouTube is very, very strict about copyrighted material such as music being on their platform. From what I understand, Instagram also was having issues with that. Vimeo used to be, not as many people use Vimeo, but it's another video platform. They used to be wide open. You could do whatever you want as a Wild West. And now they have cracked down on that. So definitely be wary if you're sitting here trying to shoot something and you have Taylor Swift blaring in the background, you may not want to. I would say shoot what you need to shoot, especially if that's the environment you're in and you can't help it. You can always record some sort of audio to place over it later, speak about what's going on, but be mindful that you don't want, a well-known song or stuff of that, anything that could run into situations with copyright infringement being a part of your video. So I would say those are things that you definitely should look for when shooting. Think about those things ahead of time, and then you can kind of approach any project already knowing what you need to avoid or need to do to accomplish what you need to accomplish.
I'm glad that you brought up portrait versus landscape, because some of this does happen to impact the interactivity of creating a live video. So in both Twitter and Facebook, the audience that's watching live has the opportunity to comment, give hearts and just positive feedback. There are additional interactive factors that happen when you're live in Facebook and Twitter that really, from a standpoint of either responding verbally on camera to, or using as a viewer the additional prompts and whatever, those actually work best from portrait mode. So for example, and this is a carryover from Periscope into what is now Periscope on Twitter. In order to give hearts or to comment, you had to be in portrait mode in order to interact with whoever was actually on camera and live. And if your purpose is to really engage your audience in the live moment, then you want to be able to have that as a part of the live experience. And you would need, therefore, to shoot in portrait mode, which, yeah, impacts how you use it later, but depends on whether just capturing the video is what you want or whether you really want that interactivity in the live moment.
Absolutely. Very good point.
As you mentioned, however, shooting in portrait mode isn't as detrimental as it used to be. And I love it that you mentioned that you can wrap a portrait shaped video in additional graphics. I'm quite guilty of doing this. So even before Periscope and Meerkat, for those of you that remember what Meerkat was once upon a time, when they were standalone products, I had done a lot of testing, and obviously I had a lot of really great captured video on my phone. I dropped that into my little video editor, and we could talk a little bit about, video editors too. I think that would be useful to people who are definitely interested in doing this themselves. But I was able to drop it into a video editor and wrap it with branded graphics that not only obviously added my brand imagery to what I was doing, but I could also add additional text, additional graphics, anything else that kind of added to the value of what was actually being said on the video. Because frankly, the video was just a single camera shot of a talking head.
Absolutely.
Kind of boring in and of itself.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I would say, that's why with portrait mode, like you said, with certain applications, it's more beneficial to you to shoot that way. And because you can take it and use it as an opportunity, now you're only taking up a portion of a 16:9, which is what is the landscape size frame for any given platform. You're taking only a portion of that real estate, leaving yourself a lot of room for graphics, for text that can really, hit home specific points that you want to translate to your audience as being important. So you could still have your logo in a corner and have this big space that you could, if you're referencing a website, you could have a screenshot of the website come up on that side. If you're talking about, a specific quote from a person or a place, you could have that quote appear in text in that space. And all of this, the more professional, the more produced something feels, the more likely people are to take it seriously, is probably the best way I could put it. If you have this thing that's got this logo and this brand, and there's an opening logo title, and there's maybe some music that you've gotten, some royalty-free music to put underneath, and all of these little elements just set you apart, I should say, from that Yahoo who's on YouTube making videos where he's yelling about politics or whatever into his cell phone, and the sun's glaring and you can barely see him, and he's got sharp, jagged jump cuts between. That guy looks like he just did something and slapped it online. You look like a business that has something to offer. So I would say, regardless of how you shoot it, obviously based on your needs is what would decide how you would as far as the aspect ratio is concerned. But depending, based on what you end up with, there are a lot of options for you to take that, repurpose it, and make it look even better than when you streamed live.
Right on. Are you finding that smartphone captured video is of a quality good enough that it could be interspersed with other more professionally shot, maybe motion graphic? That I'm thinking maybe my live video in its entirety really wasn't all that and a bag of chips, but it had moments where maybe I was interviewing somebody on the street, or the guest that I've had on camera, like I have you here on YouTube, that there were some really good quotes that I want to keep and use with something that is more produced. Are you finding that it is possible to capture cell phone video in such a way that it can be used in that situation and not feel crappy?
Absolutely. I'll give a couple examples. On my personal side, I have done lately a lot of crowdfunding videos for campaigns, not myself, but for others, where we were hired to produce a script and to shoot and edit. And in some of those, like one in particular that's launched now that's dealing with a cause, they needed to speak to representatives of certain special needs groups. Those people were not available on the day that we did our professional production. They couldn't be there to do interviews. And ultimately, because of this small time frame that we had, all they could really do was pull out their phone and record themselves saying what they needed to say. They were given questions, they answered them. The advantage of that one is it obviously didn't look exactly like the stuff we had shot, but there is a realism and a truth, again, that people relate to a video that looks a little more video and a little less produced. So when you have a person, especially giving a testimonial about yourself or your product, and it's in that way, it can be an advantage that it doesn't look completely polished and perfect. It makes it feel more real. It makes it feel like this person felt so passionately that they took time themselves to make something. On the other hand, even big movies that are out that you can see in theaters are using stuff that involves cameras. I mean, going back all the way to the first Avengers film, during the giant epic battle that happened, there's a bunch of shots in that movie that are iPhones stuck in dashboards of cars that were just recording because they were given a bunch of phones. Obviously, I think most people are probably familiar with GoPros at this point. Tons of GoPro footage in big, huge scale movies because it's a very cheap, I mean, if you know, compared to the camera that they're shooting the rest of the movie on, if you squash a GoPro and you can just pull that SD card out, you lost a couple $100. They really don't care. So they can take that camera, they can stick it in a very perilous place where maybe it's going to get run over by a car that's flipping, but they can get that footage out. So that's used all the time. So that line between super high-end professional grade camera and consumer or drifting into prosumer camera is getting smaller and smaller every day.
Well, that's certainly good news for folks that want to at least get into video content and video marketing on their own.
Absolutely. I'll use an example. When I first started getting into the industry when I was in school, one of the reasons that I went to school was just to get access to equipment, because aside from buying a very poor quality and yet very expensive Handycam at a Best Buy, or going back to even a Circuit City, if you remember them, I really, the quality of what I would shoot for the money that I had put out was terrible. It was almost unusable. Now, smartphones can do all of the things that the bigger phones can do. They can shoot at a frame rate that matches film, which is 24 frames. They can shoot with a color space that makes it look much more filmic or more produced. So and again, who doesn't have a smartphone? I mean, even if you could have an older model iPhone and it still shoots stuff that is very high quality. And obviously most people are still in that, we tend to be very competitive and we tend to always get the new technology as it comes out anyway. So there's no reason not to be shooting stuff. I mean, I meet kids all the time who are interested in filmmaking and they're like, oh, I can't wait till I can use this camera. And I'm like, you got this one right here. You should be using this one right now. Go ahead and work out the kinks, work out the bugs, shoot video of yourself, shoot your stuff, cut it together, do whatever you're going to do, because the quality, the difference between these two things is so small that you have, there's entire feature films that have gotten distribution that were just shot on phones. So there's really no excuse. If you think you should be creating video content, there's no excuse for not creating it at this point.
Excellent. I love that. Believe me, I love telling clients that, guys, there's no excuse. We're going to do this. Mm-hmm. And Michael said we could. So let's talk a little bit about some of the gadgets, gears, gizmos that if we're willing to spend a little bit of extra money, we could get an even better quality shot. And some of these things, according to what you were telling me earlier, or even free. We don't necessarily have to spend money in order to improve the quality of what we're shooting. So I kind of want to get into that. Let's talk about the free stuff first, because I know that's what everybody wants to hear about. Yeah, tell me about something that's free.
Well, are we talking like stabilization and stuff like that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, obviously there are now stabilizers that you can get for your smartphone to enable you to shoot very smooth video, whereas obviously if you're walking around with your phone trying to shoot yourself, taking steps, it's bouncing, that translates on the video. The nice thing about the stabilizers is the fact that you can run whatever app you're going to run. If you are live streaming on Facebook, you just live stream on Facebook, and there you go. You can have it in the stabilizer. They're two separate. One is the digital thing that is your app doing what it does. The other is a physical application that's helping you. If you are somewhere where you need to shoot stuff and you don't have a stabilizer, or you don't have it with you, which happens. I mean, just because you own it doesn't mean you're carrying it around in your pocket. True. They're small, but they're not that small. Let's say you're out someplace and you know, oh, this would go well with this thing I'm going to talk about, or this thing that I did talk about and I'm repurposing that video. This is perfect for that. And you don't want your video to be that as you walk around with your phone. There's an application that I would recommend people download if they don't have it already, which is called Hyperlapse. Hyperlapse was made I believe it was made by Instagram, if not picked up by them. But it is a standalone app that you can get. It is free. And it was originally created to shoot time-lapse video. And it still does that. If you shoot with it, you can speed up what you shot and have very nice time-lapse. And part of it, to make it such nice time-lapse, was it has a stabilization within the software where it looks at your frames, that all the frames you shot, and it finds basically a center point of those, zooms up or scales up your video just a little bit so that it's bouncing around, but what you're seeing is still. Now, the nice thing that a lot of people didn't realize, and I don't think it was even their intention when they made it, is the video you record with Hyperlapse can also be played back at real time, and it still utilizes the stabilization. So it gives you, for those who are familiar with what a Steadicam does in film production, that gives you these smooth gliding shots, or a glide cam, or those handheld stabilizers we mentioned for the smartphones. It will give you what is almost exactly the same look. If you have a lot of motion, you'll see that little bouncing and blurring in there from your phone bounce. But if you just kind of walk, relatively control yourself and shoot, but do it through the app, you get this very smooth, very clear image. It's great for stuff in cars. If you're driving somewhere, all that road bumping that goes on. I've shot stuff just recently in New York where I was going across Brooklyn Bridge, and I set it on the dashboard because the sun was coming in, and the shot that I ended up with was gorgeous because this stabilized everything and made us look like we're just gliding across the bridge with all these sunbeams streaming through. So Hyperlapse, very good. You should have it on your phone just for those instances, because you never know when you're going to need it. Pull it out, record something, save it, and then you can integrate it in later. Otherwise, there are the stabilizers, and the prices on those things, because every day there's a new company coming out with one, those prices are always dropping. So it's one of those things that still a little pricey now, but I would say if you are serious about this, that's something you're going to do regularly, that you see that as a necessity for yourself, it's worth it. And then the price on those things, like I said, always going down. So we're going to see in the probably not so distant future, you able to pick one of those things up for, God, I wouldn't be surprised if you start seeing them for like $30.
I spotted one for 60, and I'm pretty happy about that. Yeah, that's
a real
is my good friend for that.
Absolutely.
So yeah, of all of the things I'm doing, since I'm talking a lot about live video over the next few months, I have gizmos and fun toys coming from Amazon, and my little handheld stabilizer for $60 is one of those. For that amount of money, I think it's worth it.
And is there anything better than that Amazon box showing up at the front door?
My family at this point, I believe, is addicted. We have Amazon boxes showing up, I swear, every other day at this point. It's getting kind of sad.
Yeah, I just ordered detergent and things I could pick up at the store just so I get the box.
Well, I do it because I don't want to have to go running around for it later. But Um, trying to think, is there anything else that maybe as an editor, as a producer, are there any, like, can I say, insider tips that we should know when we're doing this so that we can repurpose and reuse?
I mean, we kind of touched on a few of them. I mean, video quality is important, but I would say paramount to that is audio quality. People will forgive bad video. Bad audio, they shut off. If it's really bad, if they can't hear you, if they can't understand you, they will change the channel, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Your video being a little grainy or a little dark, people tend to forgive that and stick with it. Obviously, it's better not to do that. It's better to shoot nice looking video with nice audio. But if you have to choose between the two, bad audio will burn you every time. So I would say definitely avoid bad audio. And I mean, like we said, that goes back to location noise, background noise, and so forth. The mics on smartphones are very, very good. The mics on laptops are very good, but they're built to pick up things. The noise cancellation that is utilized within a phone call doesn't necessarily apply when you're talking about recording something, shooting something live on a Facebook or Twitter. Don't be afraid to pull out your headset and use the mic that's on the headset, because that oftentimes will help you if you have some background noise that you want to get rid of. And before you go live, test it. I mean, you can always pull out your own video camera on your phone, hit record, say a few things, and then maybe put in your earbuds, say a few things, and see, how that sounds between the two. Like, oh, well, I noticed with my headphones, it's canceling out the marching band that is around the corner practicing. I'm barely hearing them. So that you can then, and are informed when you go in to do your live stream that your audio is going to be of a certain quality. You're not kind of guessing. There's nothing worse than shooting something, recording a whole piece, and then looking at it after the fact and going, this is unusable. Not to mention, unbeknownst to you, people who were trying to watch you live couldn't understand you either, because it's not like the audio got bad between the live stream and recording it. Another thing, obviously, is editing after the fact. In a video like this, perhaps you're trying to think of things to say and you're doing a lot of moments, or you tried to make a point and you stammered and stuttered and you kind of reset yourself. People watching live, no big deal. They understand. We do that as human beings. When you have a finished, completed video, it's much harder for people to forgive that kind of thing. So I would recommend always editing the piece after the fact. Now, that can sound daunting, and it doesn't necessarily have to be. But again, that goes back to, you should be doing that anyway so that you can take advantage of branding and doing things that make the video more interesting and more engaging for future audiences. As far as editing is concerned, there's a lot of softwares out there. I mean, if you have a PC, chances are you have Windows Movie Maker. If you have a Mac, chances are you have iMovie. Those obviously are there for you to use. There are bigger platforms. Like, I don't work on those because the needs that I have on a professional level are much greater than they can accomplish. But even, I'll use an example because there's a lot out there that are cheap, and then there's one that's really, really nice, and it's free. DaVinci Resolve, which is from the Blackmagic company, is free to download and run, provided your computer is newer and can run it. It was designed as a nonlinear coloring platform. For those who don't know, pretty much every production, television or film that you see at this point has had some sort of post-coloring done to it. It's had the brightness and contrast levels adjusted. It's had coloration done so that that's the reason Pirates of the Caribbean is bright and colorful and Transformers is bright and colorful, and yet you go into The Matrix and it's all green. That's all post-coloring work that was done on those films to give it an aesthetic. Now, DaVinci was designed for that, but in the last few years, they started adding in a non-linear editing portion that's part of the program so that people could work and stay within the platform. Instead of, like myself, I cut on one project or one product, and then I had to send that over to DaVinci to color in. It's editing platform isn't perfect on a professional level anyway, but it is very, very strong. And like I said, it's free. They've been offering that program for free for a while now because they want up and coming filmmakers to become familiar with them. And it's worked because they are the #1 program for post coloring. And it's, you know, with their step into doing nonlinear, they're going to have a whole generation of filmmakers and video makers that come up that only know how to use that program. I'm sure there's a learning curve involved, as with anything. However, it's like anything else. You go onto YouTube and say how to edit in DaVinci, and you're going to come up with a bunch of tutorials. And especially for what most people doing what we're talking about doing here, it's not really complex. It's taking a video track, it has audio with it, it's putting it on a timeline, it's chopping out pieces that don't make sense, it's adding some transitions to keep things interesting. It's you know, once you have assets like your logo bug or a lower third already built, it's very easy to set that on another channel, and there it is. It's done. Now you set this here. You know, even things like lower thirds, having an animated, like interesting lower third. If you go on Google and type, you know, free lower thirds, you'll find a ton. Animated ones, but still an animated, you know, build yourself, you know, something that's cohesive and everything kind of matches. You want your logo and color palette to match your lower third palette, to match whatever graphics you come in. That's just good branding practice. But it's, you know, to do that kind of things, add in a little music, it wouldn't take you very long to get schooled on how to do that. And then your videos will look leaps and bounds better by just learning those simple things and doing those applications.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Michael McWhorter, for spending some time to share a little bit of your knowledge and expertise. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
All right. See you next time.